What's up, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy Sports Now. So we already did a list about the top 10 all-time hitters from the year 2000 going forward. And we talked about maybe doing a top 10 hitters list ever of all time, all of baseball, going back to the 1800s. And so here we are again. Let's do the list. If you like any of this stuff, just let me know. Hit me with a sub, hit me with a like, comment. Let's talk about it because it's actually pretty interesting. I haven't really looked into the names too much on this list, so it's a little fresh, it's a little raw. There's a lot of repeats. And there's a lot of old names, obviously, as you know. I don't know what it was. You know what? Let's get into the content. Let's go right to the list here. So I want to pull up my list on my side here. And all right, so here we go. Before we jump into the list, I got to change my header because this isn't right. This is now ever. So, I mean, it's not a big deal, but boom, there you go. So, points system, just to let you know how you kind of created this list, is you get 1 point for a single, 2 points for a double, 3 for a triple, 4 for a home run, 1 for a run, 1 for RBI, 1 for a walk, 1 for hit by pitch, and 2 for stolen bases. This is, I think, again, the standard for most points leagues. The only difference I can think of is points are sometimes won in other leagues, and there's other categories sometimes in other scoring leagues. But this is what we're going to use to kind of make up our list today. And to give you a point of reference, this is the same list from the other one. This is 2019. This is the total. This Cody Bellinger had the most points in 2019. He had 715 points. So that's just a point of reference for all of you. Something that we kind of looked at last time was looking at RBI and runs and home runs, and you can see there's nothing absolutely crazy here. You know, stolen bases, they're all within the realm of normal things that we expect today. What you're about to see is not what you expect. And let's dive right in. Number 10, Gehrig. I didn't really... it's hard. Okay, so 1936 was the season he had this year. It's so hard to tell between players from then and players from now because obviously the technology has advanced. Pitching has greatly been improved since that time. This was a time when African Americans weren't allowed to play in Major League Baseball, so we were missing like amazing cultures, in this game. So it's really hard to identify if this was them being extraordinarily good or if it was the talents just weren't there, or if it was the pitching just wasn't there, or maybe they were just this good. And looking at this compared to 2019, the immediate standout is holy crap. Okay, 167 runs and 152 RBIs. RBI, sorry. That's insane. And we're not talking about that many more at bats here. So if you go to 2019, we're talking. Look at Acuna here. He's got 626 at bats, 715 plate appearances. So we're right in that range here, and the RBI and run is just immensely higher. So that's pretty amazing, not to mention how high the walks are. You're going to see him again on this list, and I'm not afraid to admit that I'm a big-time baseball guy, but I don't know some of these names. Like Hack Wilson, I don't know his name. If you're from Chicago, you probably do. Ty Cobb is the big name from Detroit from this era. One of the greatest hitters of all time. Actually isn't on this list because of the format. So if you're from Chicago, you might know who Hack Wilson is, but I don't, and I apologize. But a very similar stat line, except for, oh my lord, 191 RBI. So in the last episode of this, I had talked about another player, if you combined some of these guys, you might get to 191. Well, that is a real thing now. If you combine these two, Acuna and Marcus Semien, then you're at 192 RBI. And these were two of the top 10 players in 2019. So that's just amazing right there. So I don't think that gets topped in this list here. Moving on to number 8, another one, Jimmy Fox. I've actually, again, never heard of. They're all from the 30s, so baseball must have been amazing to watch in the 1930s because I don't know if it was just getting popular and it was, I don't know, but just like the amount of hitting that took place, I don't know if it was because pitchers went too long and the analytics now says not to do that. They weren't going to bullpens or that, people were just pitching and pitching. until their arms fell off, so it could have been part of that. But again, not that many at-bats, not that many plate appearances. It's not like they hit more often than back then, but we're looking at an absolute career year. Barry Bonds actually outdid this in that 2001 season, which we're going to see in a second. But these numbers are absolutely staggering. I don't think we'll ever see a 169 RBI player probably again. And maybe that's bold, but until we have pitchers going forever and no analytics or steroids return, I don't see that happening. It's just insane. Babe Ruth, we're going to see him a few times on this list. If you're a Yankees fan, you're going to see him a lot. Some things that surprised me, actually, I didn't have it highlighted. We think of Babe Ruth as this kind of blundering, large-bodied dude, with a beer gut, but he had 17 stolen bags, and he had 13 triples, so that's interesting to me, because I never thought of him as somebody who could move, and yet here you're seeing evidence of it, especially when you see these other guys who are kind of these power hitters not getting any bags, so it's before that era, so I don't know if something's a little different. It's impossible to tell, right, guys? But everything across the board is really strong, and I believe his point total here actually matches Barry Bonds' from the last one, and there's Barry Bonds. If you missed the last one, Barry Bonds has so many points because of these dongs. This is just preposterous. The fact that he had more home runs than he did singles, I don't know if that's ever happened outside of this season, ever. I'll try to see if I can find that, but that's the only time I've ever seen. He also had 177 walks, which does compare back to these guys from the 30s. So that's pretty interesting stuff. Seventh and sixth overall. So the closest person we have to the 30s is Barry Bonds' 2001 season, where he was juiced up like crazy. So I think it's a testament to rather how good these guys were, or again, the pitching analytics. So number 5 coming in at Babe Ruth again. A couple of highlights. Babe Ruth, he hit a lot of home runs, and the counting stats are where these things just rack up. There's nothing else really to say here that's different than this season up here, except for it was better than the prior one. Barely. Just by a point overall, but he had just a tremendous season. Let's just move on, because it's too similar to the other one. Billy Hamilton. Okay, again, another name that 1894 here, so we're going way back. I don't even remember when baseball was invented, but obviously it was probably right around this time. The absolutely fascinating thing about Billy Hamilton that I noticed was not so much the fact that he had 220 hits, which is absolutely preposterous, because you could see nobody else had that many hits and singles in this league. This guy must have been a leadoff hitter, because if you go all the way over here, you see the amount of runs, which is amazing. It's the most runs I've ever seen in a season. This is, again, kind of like combining people to get runs. How many runs were down here? There's a little bit more run than RBI, but, you could combine a few really good hitters in today's game to get 192 runs. RBI was low because I think he obviously was a leadoff hitter, but look at this. This is the guy from the last video that I talked about. 98 stolen bases. So essentially, we'll call that 100, so, pretty much 2/3 of the time that he got on base, he was stealing that base. And he probably stole and got caught stealing, so it's probably higher than that. So out of 140 singles, he probably stole, or out of 176 singles, he probably stole 140 times. That's crazy. This is absolutely insanity, and at 2 points a pop. It's almost humorous thinking about how much that he stole, and you will never see that again. That's stupid. The top guys on this list aren't necessarily your stealers, but we see in the 50s occasionally, but 98. It's laughable, guys. It's really laughable. Lou Gehrig. Okay, I think we have Lou Gehrig twice in a row, so let's actually compare both of them together. 5 years apart. Where was his other one? Was the 36 season. Wow. So he had massive years all within 5 different year spans. So that's pretty amazing, especially, I don't know when his health started to degenerate. I assume it was kind of after, or at least his last season, which I don't know when it was. So New York fans, hey, correct me. on that. So, and obviously a very sad story, and his name will live forever. And actually, baseball is going through, and they're going to make, what was it, June 2nd, Lou Gehrig Day, which I think is deserved, just because I mean, it's such a devastating blow to the city, and it was just rough. I mean, I wasn't there for it, but watching him give that speech was really hard. It's like if anybody watches wrestling, WWE, and they come out and they give their like retirement speech, and you're like, maybe I haven't been kept keeping up with this necessarily, but that was just really sad. Like they're never gonna wrestle again. Lou Gehrig had the exact same thing, and it was brutal. It's really hard to watch. But in terms of baseball, tons of hits. Look at this double production, and then you're starting to get to this run and RBI. That's just stupid. Throwing some stolen bases, and I mean everything is elevated here. And you're at 908 points, which is 200 above the best player in 2019. 200. That is insane. If this was an auction league, you'd spend 40-50% of your cap on this guy just because he scores so much more than the best player, and yet it wasn't the greatest of all time, which is, of course, Babe Ruth. Of course, who else did we expect it to be? So what made this season so great? At this point, you're almost 300. You're almost. It's not there yet, but you're almost at 300 points better than the best player in 2019. That's crazy. So what made it so great was everything, obviously, but home runs and this run and RBI production to go along with a super high walk rate and stolen bases were added in there. Again, 16 triples. So maybe, I don't know if defenses were bad. Maybe the defenses were bad. Maybe they were just brutal defenses and things would drop that would today never drop. It has to be something, because this stat line is not repeatable, and it never will be repeatable again unless steroids are reintroduced. But even with the height of the steroid era, you took an all-star player, Barry Bonds, one of the greatest actual players prior to steroids, and gave him steroids. He still wasn't. He was 100 points away from this Babe Ruth season. So I think it had to do with pitching. I don't really truly believe that Babe Ruth was this much better than a guy like Barry Bonds. I just don't think that that's true. But it's one of those arguments that'll never be resolved, and then maybe that's the joy of it. Maybe that's the fun of it. So, hey guys, if you liked it, hey, hit me up and let's talk. This was fun. Let's keep doing them.